lower commodity prices in the week, and Jerry Gidel is ready to analyze all of that and more right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had a very weak, uh, we had weak prices this week for all of the agricultural commodities except beef. Later on, we will talk about the new screwworm, and then so what do you see? Let's start with corn. What do you think was the main driver of this bearish market?
Well, basically, we are winding up our planting season. We're over 90%, I think 92%. That's at or above the kind of the last 5 year average. It's not surprisingly high or and that, but in general here, once you get the corn in the ground, there's limited kind of emotions here that doesn't require a lot of moisture because it's so small, and at the same time, uh, uh, heat helps it. But right now, there's a lot of area of the Midwest, particularly in the central Midwest, that could use a drink after a very limited moisture situation during May, and that. So but the market reaction here was mostly reacting to technicals and that on things as it goes along. The interesting thing on the corn side is that uh, the the USDA's Undersecretary of Trade, somewhere along the line, was talking about the fact that Chinese were buyers of corn. Yeah, they were finishing up their last purchases back in April and May, and that, but there hadn't been any new shipments or indications here on the new crop at this point, and that, and to some extent, the Chinese are still in the process of handling their South American purchases at this point. So right now, at least, the market is uh, somewhat was on the defensive this time of year anyway. But on top of that, we had some liquidation, really led by the soybeans, and I think that was the one that was quite dramatic here once it took out kind of the 1160 zone out there that had been a long-term uptrend line on things, and to some extent had still some long open interest in it, and that hit the market pretty hard there, despite well, you know, South American information at this point, nothing dramatically negative there. Interestingly enough, on part of the thing it hit it on Thursday too was that we had a little lull in our exports. Actually, to some extent, I think everybody's kind of staring at the window here of seeing where we're at seasonally, and that we've the export sales that reported it only leaves us about uh, you know 40 or 50 million on soybeans and 100 million or less on corn sales. Actually, that suggests to me that we could have some further purchases going on here ahead of us with the full quarter going, but the market uh, wasn't impressed by the lackluster numbers, so that added to the break in both corn and soybeans that were accelerated by breaking down some technical uptrend lines that prompted some heavy selling from the investors there on the East Coast.
Yes, but on the other hand, we for wheat we have had a very different reports. I saw a report that said that Central Kansas has had a delay on the harvest because of extended rain when we had several months of drought.
Yes, well, it's an interesting scenario because Yes, there was a, a little bit better rain profile, really from central and eastern Oklahoma, eastern Nebraska, eastern Texas, and also, as you point out, central Kansas. It wasn't in some of the strongest wheat producing areas, but it was uh, actually an inch rain in there that they haven't seen in quite some time in central Kansas, and that which is a stabilizing effect. I do not. This is too late in the game to all of a sudden help the crop size. Nebraska had some scattered rains too, in the Colorado. Probably the one that caught a lot of attention too was Montana. That was starting to have some issues, but there was some rains out there in the far northwest corner of Montana where the winter wheat markets production is at. So there was some rains around that maybe stabilized things a little bit. But I also was picking up some reports here from the combines that the Texas yields so far had only been 20 to 25 bushels, and to some extent, um, there's still a lot of concerns that there's going to be some huge advances. And to some extent, traditionally, we're not really talking about uh, harvesting prospects in Kansas here until the latter week or so of June, with Fourth of July, just that Wichita, Kansas are a little past it, and there was some talk that there could even see some combines flying along there in another 10 days in Kansas. So that's an indication that there isn't as many fields out there to harvest, and there's also not a lot of bushels out there. So kind of a two-bladed sword. But yes, there was some rains around, and psychologically that kind of provided a little bit of limited enthusiasm in the wheat in the short term, but still got a long harvest ahead of us, and I think that's still going to be a interesting situation. Uh, I wouldn't say that we're going to collapse the U.S. Winter wheat crop a huge amount further, but I'm kind of anticipating this coming report being 20 or 25, 30 million less than it was a month ago, but that's something to see on the when we get our June 11th update for the USDA winter wheat production.
Yes, and this week we also had this report of the screwworm entering the United States, the first conformant case in the US. So this is yet another factor that brings the cattle prices higher. We have had this problem since last year in Mexico, reducing the output in Mexico and the imports from the United States. We also have had the drought in the US for several years that has impacted the cattle herd, and it just keeps getting worse. But I still think that the cattle prices are not really completely related to grain prices.
No, no, that uh, well, the twist of it is that the, most of this early part of the week where there was this fear that the screwworm fly was going to be discovered, the market was on a sluggish trend here. Oh no, we're going to end up uh, the public is not going to buy beef and things of that nature, and then when it was the first report was out there on Wednesday night into Thursday, then we had a dramatically turn of events there as the alertly figured out that the beef supply that's here now hasn't have any issues, and to some extent. Uh, uh, it's not a widespread situation with only one report. Now, interestingly, Friday afternoon, Friday night, we found a second one not too far from the first one. But in reality of the thing is that this is not something that is likely to impermeate the whole beef supply, but at the same time, it's I think putting quite an interesting twist on it here as the markets, well, start to react back to the potential longer term impact on this thing because the fact that just one more thing here to limit the enthusiasm about expanding the U.S. beef supply. And it's this time it's really from the standpoint of the uh, excuse me, the cow curve calf industry and that's the two incidents were from small calves that had been infected. So, that's all we need is to have as we try to expand our herd, we still have issues of trying to get the more beef animals into the feed yard. And that doesn't help when you end up having this thing going on too. Because it really is not something that is individually each animal has to be infected. It's not like all of a sudden you feed them bad feed and all the feed is bad, so all the cattle are bad. No, that's the thing is kind of a twist on this whole thing. So it's still going to have its ups and downs here as to how the market's going to react to it and that. But right now, just one more, as they say, fly in the ointment here on prices on the U.S. because beef is our largest consumer of corn in the U.S. On domestically from the standpoint of utilization, along with all livestock, I should say, not from there. But it's just one more curveball that we have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, so overall, what do you think we're going to have next week? We're going to have a crop update. But I don't see major changes in that crop up.
Totally agree. The trade's right there with you on things. The one thing on corn and soybeans after they make the official May numbers here for corn and soybeans yields and acreage and stuff like that. We don't get an update until that June 30th acreage, so there won't be any changes there. I know people like to mess with it and think it's going to go up or down slightly, but there really isn't any changes there. The biggie is as to what's our final demand numbers really turn out to be here on things. And that's the interesting thing. I kind of feel like that the strong ethanol demand here on corn is going to maybe boost the USDA's number there and tighten up our old crop. Not much, 50 million, but the trade average guess uh, on that is basically only down 4 or 5 million from there, and so. Looking at the corn going into next year because of the reduced supply and the logic that the ethanol demand will stay pretty strong in next year. I'm kind of the low man out there on taking down the carryover stock by 900, or excuse me, by a million. Yeah, excuse me, by 100 million. Well, the trade's basically just looking for a small number down of 10. Uh, Soybean wise, I don't sense there's a lot of adjustments going on there on the USDA's numbers or myself. It's 340 last month and 310, and there'll be some numbers right around that. Wheat is the kind of maybe the one that could have some impact here. The trade average guess on carryover stock is up a little bit on wheat, primarily because I think that some of the late numbers here from the wheat market on late shipments out were disappointing for me. I kind of felt like that they might actually take the exports from 910 down to maybe 890 and that not the trade is really looking at, and it's always interesting. Wheat is has a lot of different things that can be utilized at, so that's an interesting one there from that point. So but right now the wheat production is probably the one that people are looking at closer. As I said, I'm kind of cautious that there might be some reduction out there in the hard red winter wheat. And there hasn't been a huge tradition of that happening because the fact that we just haven't had enough harvest information for big adjustments. But what I have heard in Texas and Oklahoma, both of those states, I think, are going to have some reduced prospects. And I think the one thing that's a wild card at this point, which really won't be determined on this USDA report next Thursday on the 11th, is harvested acres on winter wheat. That is not updated until the whole U.S. winter wheat numbers are all the harvested and planted numbers are updated on June 30th acreage report. So right now, the trade is only looking for about a 5 or 6 million reduction in the overall winter wheat. Uh, Most of that's in hard red, of course, from adjustments there, while soft red could see some slight improvements. But the one thing is interesting, the Midwest might be doing a little bit better on its yields this month versus last, but I think the Southeast areas there from North Carolina, Georgia, maybe Alabama. Uh, just hasn't had the rains down there, so I think they're going to go down, and so I don't look for a lot of change myself there. But that's one of the theories that's floating around out here. From there, and to some extent, this week's rains in Kansas might be a tad late for making some adjustment there in the Kansas crop. That's definitely always takes its as the bellwether there in winter wheat because it's the biggest producing state out there on that along the way. South American numbers here, by the way. USDA has been slowly increasing excuse me, not Kansas, uh, Argentina's numbers comparison to the trade in in uh, in Argentina. I think the trade's clear up at 64 million on Argentina corn production, which is a huge jump, I think, from in the 52 million last year, and that. And the, the trade's also looking for a half to 1 million metric ton upgrade in soybean, excuse me, in the average trade guess. Argentina is actually looking for 50 up too. So that's really the adjustments is where's this final numbers in Argentina. The numbers in Brazil seem to be pretty well settled at 135 and 180, 180 million metric tons on beans. From there, the so interesting set of data there, but I don't know how much dynamics they will turn into here. I think the surprise one, because I think is maybe the U.S. wheat production number, but unfortunately, in the month of June, and particularly after we've kind of banged around the technicals here on uh, corn, soybeans, and wheat, uh, we're going to potentially, at best, try to hold our current range and maybe had a little bit of building concern about dryness uh, right now. We had a little rain this in many areas this last week in the Western Corn Belt and the Great Plains, but uh, right now at least we definitely need a lot more rain for the coming corn and soybean crops, and that will probably be the focus of what the markets will be dealing with during the month of June here as we go to the 4th of July.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you later.
If you made it this far, this is for you. If you want deeper insights into how agriculture, geopolitics, and global markets actually connect, subscribe to the Geopolitics Report on Substack. That's where I go beyond the headlines, breaking down the strategies, risks, and shifts shaping the global food system. Subscribe and stay ahead. Thank